This is the boardroom.
It is.
Hi, John. How you doing today?
Pretty good, Jeff.
Test. Let's turn some volume up in here, shall we? Hey, John, can you say something to test the volume in here for us?
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you. Just point at the hot seat. Uh-oh. Morning, Sandy. How are you today? I think I'm on, yeah. Morning, Sandy.
Good morning.
There you are. How you doing today?
All right. How are you?
Good. I am the empty chair.
That's a tough seat to fill.
That's right.
Let's see, volume.
Just so you guys know, we are recording already. John, if you wouldn't mind when your committee starts, if you could announce that we're recording, I'd appreciate it.
Be glad to.
Thank you, sir. Okay, this is really weird. The camera is not. There it goes. Oh, I just I had to reboot. Yep. There we go. That's what I wanted. So this camera is really goofy. When it's perfectly flat on the table, it's off just a tiniest little sliver. Oh, you guys can't see it in here. Yeah, and I always have to put like 2 pieces of paper underneath it to get it to sort of level out.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, Jeff, there's a pink screen there.
A big screen, yes, there is.
I know, a pink one. I wonder if that's Bob Harley.
Yeah, that's just their camera is the way it's set. I don't know who that is.
Well, that's a great picture there.
Yeah.
Hey, John,
Yeah,
Bob Hurley here. I didn't have my microphone open because purposely not on your committee, so that is my pink screen.
yeah. Give me a call later, okay?
Sure, not a problem. I didn't want to barge in on the committee meetings, being that I'm not a person who should be speaking at them. How you been?
Um, no complaints. It's, as everybody knows, it's all a brave new world, so to speak. So
You got that correct.
I think I've been on the bus once since March 13th.
Wow. Once.
Yeah, and that was to get down to Shady Side Hospital for blood work. But that was interesting.
Hello?
Good morning. I see a couple of folks on the phone. If you're board members, can you please identify yourself?
Yeah, Jen Liptak. I'm on the phone, 412-443-7427, and I'll be on the phone, okay?
I see you. Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning,
Thank you.
Jennifer.
Good morning. Thanks, guys. I'm going to go on to mute and listen in, but I just want to make sure you guys knew, because sometimes you don't know what my number is, and then no one knows I'm on the phone. So, okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
I see Stephanie on.
Good morning.
Morning, Stephanie.
Hey, John, you should be seeing a slideshow now with our mission and vision. Is that true?
Yes.
Fabulous.
Good morning.
Yeah,
Good
Michelle.
morning.
Hi there. Good
Morning,
morning.
Michelle.
So the camera is really only pointing at that main seat there? Okay. And John, to confirm, our camera is still on?
Conferencing solution. Please enter your conference ID followed by pound.
I can, Jeffrey. It's on.
All right, thanks, Adam.
Join the conference.
When I start sharing the PowerPoint, it tends to turn the video off.
Please enter your PIN followed by the pound sign. You are the first participant to join the conference. Please stand by.
Are there any other board members that have dialed in on the phone? Please identify yourself. You'll need to turn that on when you're ready to roll. See the switch on the top?
Let's see, Ann's on now, I guess.
All right. There is a clicker there. If you want to use it, you're welcome to. If not, I'll tap.
We'll start the meeting at 8:31. Did that make your morning, Michelle?
It did. There's construction 2 doors down. They're ripping up the street, gas lines. My dog is howling, and my grandson is due any minute. Other than that, we're under control here.
This is the altered state.
Good morning, committee members. I'd like to call the Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee for July 16th to order. Before we begin the meeting itself, I had a brief statement. Under Catherine's leadership, we have increased community engagement. I've heard a few complaints from some stakeholders that they are not being listened to. I assure you that as a fellow stakeholder and as chair of this committee, I listen. I also communicate with staff on many of these issues. I find that our staff to be engaged and they are listening. As the Port Authority can't do everything our stakeholders request, but to emphasize the staff and I am listening to the concerns that stakeholders have. Anyway, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
Hey, John, may I interject for a moment?
Right ahead.
I'd like to announce that we are recording all the committee meetings this morning. Thank you.
You asked me to do that simple thing and I forgot. Sorry, Jeff. So thanks for interjecting that. Anyway, so are there any corrections to the minutes?
No.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. This is Ann.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second, this is Stephanie.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now, the next thing on the agenda is the authorization to amend the Port Authority of Allegheny County's transit service standards. David and are you going to be speaking to that? Okay.
Good morning, Chair Tague and members of the Planning and Stakeholders Committee, Stakeholder Relations Committee. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I am David Huffaker. I'm the Chief Development Officer, and I'm just going to provide a brief overview. There are actually 3 items on the agenda today, and they're all related to each other, and there's sort of a logical flow to them. So I'm going to just provide brief context and then have Philip walk you through each of the individual actions as well as the resolution requests. But first, we'll have our transit service standards. That's our document that provides the guidelines for how we provide service. And we have an annual process where we review those standards and then have the board adopt those standards. Those standards guide our service decisions. And so we do have a set of proposed service changes that we're looking at for the November service change. based on those service standards. So presuming that those service standards get approved, then we would take forward the action for the actual service changes. And then based on those service changes, we do a Title VI analysis of those proposals to ensure that we are abiding by the strictures of our Title VI program. Philip is going to go into some detail on that. So with that context, I'm going to let Philip St. Pierre take over the rest of the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David. Good morning, committee members. I am Philip St. Pierre, Director of Service Planning and Scheduling at Port Authority. And the first item on today's agenda is for the amendment to the transit service standards. Last month, I gave a preview of the changes that we would like to make in fiscal year 21 with the inclusion of additional weekend service. So the first item today is to amend our transit service standards so that we could progress with adding that additional weekend service in fiscal year 21. As part of the committee packet is Exhibit A, which is the amended update to the transit service standards. And the only addition that we did was on page 15, which established the minimum standards for local coverage and rapid routes to daily service. Currently, our rapid routes are operating 7 days a week, and we do have some local and coverage routes that are not operating 7 days a week, whether it be 5 days or 6 days to include Saturdays. So with these new minimum standards, we'd like to get the local and coverage routes to be operating on daily service. Commuter service, that's typically a service that is focused on AM and PM peak during the weekdays. So that minimum service will be set at weekday service. There is some language as part of the amendment that explains that there may be some differences in the weekday versus weekend routing, depending on the needs of the communities and in doing the analysis to make sure that we're providing efficient, effective, and equitable transit service. So there may be locations along a route that may be closed on Saturdays and Sundays, so there may be some modifications to that route. So that's really why that language is in there, to provide us a little bit of flexibility versus weekday and weekend routing. So today I respectfully request to advance this resolution to adopt this amendment to the 2019 transit service standards. And at this time, I'd like to turn it back over.
So we need a motion. Is that we need a motion to move it on to the board? So if we need a motion, who will make that motion?
This is Jessica. I can make the motion.
Okay, Jessica makes the motion. Is there a second?
I second. This is Ann.
Any questions on the motion? Okay, seeing no questions, do I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to move to the full board is approved. Thank you. Next, then, it's the November 2020 major service changes. Is that what? That's next on the agenda?
That is correct. Thank you very much. So the next item on today's agenda is to talk about the fiscal year 21 proposed major service changes. We are tentatively planning to implement these in November of 2020. It's all additions of weekend service with an extension to the Route 2, adding Sunday service on multiple routes, but also adding Saturday and Sunday service for a variety of routes that are listed on the slide here. So we're very excited to get weekend service on these routes, and we think it's a very big benefit to the communities. As our goals, we're looking at finding gaps in our service. Weekend service was one gap that we really wanted to address. We're also looking to expand to cover nighttime service and provide transit service to employees that may work different hours than the typical 9 to 5 worker. So this is a good first step on providing that providing that closure in one of the gaps in our network. So we're very excited to add this service and work towards seeing the benefits to the communities. As the COVID-19 situation has progressed, it's definitely identified gaps where we need to find coverage, and we're excited to get this going hopefully in November of 2020. As part of that, since these are major service changes, we are required to do a Title VI analysis as part of our Title VI program. Since these are service additions, the analysis has shown that there is no adverse impacts or adverse effects on disparate impact for minority populations or disproportionate burden for low-income populations, as you can see in the report and on the slide presented today. These service additions, they do show that there's an increase of service for 93% more than the comparable service area in the county for the minority populations, and also a 168% increase in service compared to the rest of the county for low-income populations. So today, the Title VI has been presented, and the analysis includes, as required for disparate impact for minority populations, disproportionate burden for low-income populations, and as a result of these service additions, there are no adverse effects to the service area and to these populations. So today, we would like to set forth a motion to formally approve the Title VI analysis with the November service changes that we're planning to the full board.
So I need a motion to recommend to the approval of the committee to the full board. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
This is Ann, I second.
Any questions? Now, I do have a question about in the equity piece with other groups. Do we look at that also, the other groups that are part of our equity equation? When we look at when we're looking at the Title VI, we do look at the other groups at the same time. Philip?
Yes, that is correct. We have a very extensive equity analysis. For the Title VI portion, these are the two required populations that need to be analyzed. But since these are service additions, we didn't do the extensive analysis. If we are going to do service reductions, we would definitely want to include all data points that's a part of our equity analysis to make sure that there's no adverse impacts on any of the populations that we're trying to provide equitable service to.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Any additional questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, as in past practices, what I'd like to do, if there's any stakeholders on the call, are there any questions that they would have of anything that Philip has presented to this point?
Hi, this is Laura with PPT. First of all, again, we're thrilled about this proposal to extend weekend service to these routes. Many of them are routes that we've been calling for over the last several years, and it's really, really exciting to see them extended in one fell swoop. My only question is, when will we have a sense of the service frequency and the service span of those routes?
We should. We could get that before the service change. We are obviously going to use our transit service standards as a minimum. As we build these routes into our scheduling software, we may find efficiencies where we can, have faster frequencies than our minimums in our transit service standards. So prior to the implementation of this service, we can provide what those schedules will be and what the spans of service will be. Give an example of the schedule. So I would say probably, at least a couple months before, as we can present on that. We will present it to ACTC in the CAC committees, to make sure that they're aware, and we can also provide it to your organization as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Any other stakeholders' questions? No. Thank you, folks. Do I have a motion to adjourn the Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee?
So moved. It's Jessica.
Do I have a second?
Second, this is Ann.
Okay, meeting stands adjournment until, I guess, September, because next month's August and we don't meet in August. Or at least I don't think we meet in August, right, Jeff? Jeff Letwin.
Yeah, we do not meet in August typically.
Okay. Thank you very much, and that concludes our meeting.
Okay, I'll just give everyone just a minute to switch over to the Finance Committee. I know myself, I'm looking for my agenda real quick, so we'll just give it a second.
Is that cute?
This is there, what's the order? When will the Technology Committee be up?
Okay, I'll go ahead and call the Finance Committee to order. The first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the June 18th Finance Committee meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look at those minutes? And if so, I will. Okay. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I will turn it over then to Jim Ritchie for the next item.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here today to share with you some information about the year-end results for our advertising sales program. This is actually a bright spot. As some of you know, and I'll explain for others on the call today, the meeting call, advertising sales revenue is usually lags 2 months, even 3 months behind the initial sales. So sometimes we don't see the revenue from a contract a few months later in the year. So because of that, we were able to meet and surpass our advertising revenue goal for last fiscal year, and we surpassed the $3 million mark for the first time in Port Authority's history. This is quite an accomplishment for our ad sales group. Year over year, that's an 8.8% increase. Last year we reached, or the year before we reached $2.8 million in advertising revenue. And it also represents a 47% 5-year increase in advertising. Back in 2015, we were at $2.1 million in local revenue from our ad sales program. And also, just a reminder that all of our advertising sales revenue supports our operating budget. This is money that comes right into our budget and helps support the services we provide and our day-to-day expenses that help run the authority. Now, moving forward, so maybe a little gloomier, our budget for the current fiscal year is $2.75 million, and now, because of that lag, we have started to feel the impact of the coronavirus as people are working remotely. Advertising sales also has dropped as a result of that, so we're starting to see that impact in our system, and we're going to have to monitor that closely. The ad group is talking regularly with all of our clients, some of the firms that broker those deals for us. They're very interested in advertising as soon as things start to resume normal or look normal, and especially downtown area where a lot of that ad-based viewership would return to the system. So we're working very hard to make sure we're ready for that and to renew some of the revenue for the authority. And the next slide really just shows graphically the increase in advertising sales over the years. That's a 15-year look. which goes back towards the start of the ad sales program. But you can see, at least through the last 10 years, the pretty steadily increased year by year, and we want to do everything we can to try and continue with that trend. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I wanted to share this information with this committee.
Any questions?
Questions for Jim. It's Michelle. Just a comment. Congratulations on working towards that 3 million and getting that goal. And we'll just work through COVID and hope for better things in the future. So thank you and congratulations, Jim.
Thank you, and I'll extend that to Michelle, and I'll extend that to Terry Landis, who is the Director of Advertising Sales, and whatever magic she's been doing over the last 10 years, I'm going to ask her to keep doing it, so it certainly will help.
I second Michelle's remarks. That's obviously there's a lot of hard work going into that, so I thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Financial statements and cash flow, and I'll turn that over to Pete.
Good morning. I am going to discuss the unaudited fiscal 2020 results. As in prior June meetings, these are the unaudited results. They don't include some significant accruals for salary and wages for the last pay. And also there's a number of outstanding invoices of significant dollar amounts that are not included in this. But so the preliminary results for fiscal 2020 unaudited show a $28.5 million deficit. Are we able to get rid of that? Sorry. And as I've mentioned at previous meetings, the final fiscal year-end deficit will be addressed with CARES Act funding. Just a little bit of an update on that. The federal guidance regarding the coronavirus CARES Act funding is evolving. In fact, just last Wednesday, there was a rather significant change in some of the eligibility requirements for expenses. So that's delayed our initial invoice, but with that guidance that just came out on Wednesday, I feel comfortable that we can submit our first one probably within the next 2 weeks. So just a status update on that. From a total operating revenue perspective for the month, we were a little over $6 million under budget in operating revenue, most of that due to total passenger revenues being $5.4 million under budget. Our preliminary total operating revenue for the entire fiscal year was almost $20.6 million under budget, 20.3 of that due to less passenger revenue. And both those variances were directly caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The total operating revenue shortfall will be included in the first CARES Act invoice. Our total expense for the month was $9 million below budget, but as I said earlier, that excludes, I'd say probably $6 to $7 million in accruals that will transpire within the next 4 to 6 weeks. The total preliminary expense for fiscal 2020 was $39.7 million below budget, and likewise, that would exclude those accruals.
Pete, I have a quick question. Has the passenger fare revenue or the ridership recovered at all in the past month? Or are we still looking at like this 75 to 80% decrease?
No, the revenue actually for the most recently completed week was down about like 57%. Ridership, I believe, for the most recent available, which was through the July 4th area, was down, but that was because of the holiday. So,
Okay.
yeah, from a passenger revenue perspective, we have seen a slight bounce back, and that's probably due in part, to changing from the rear door boarding to the front door boarding. Jeffrey, I don't think
Thank you.
Advancing.
Yeah, Pete, it's John. Do we, the standard question, I guess, do we anticipate any additional money coming in from the feds?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussions. Dan DeBone gives us daily updates on legislation that's out there, but we have not been notified of any additional funding.
Oh, yeah, because I think the president was talking about some additional infrastructure funding. So that's kind of what I was thinking about. And I know it's still up in the air, but I just wondered whether, for example, in the legislation that's being discussed, is there anything in there about transportation? Do you know?
And the infrastructure package, I'm not aware of.
Infrastructure, anything. What has Dan told you about that?
Good morning, John. This is Catherine. So the House has passed an infrastructure bill. It has to get to the Senate for action. That is one item. The other item is the American Public Transportation Association is heading up the push for a subsequent CARES Act for transit that would include up to $36 million. That's their request. We haven't seen anything going through. And what's coming out of the White House is more focused on not doing the $600 for unemployment, doing a payroll tax holiday. So assuming you're working, it would be helpful for you. Some other tax implications, but we haven't seen anything that shows where a second CARES Act at this point is going that would include funding for transit. But we will keep you posted as we get more information.
Okay, thank you, Catherine.
So from a total expense perspective, as I mentioned, the expenses exclude the year-end accruals. The total salary and wage accrual is estimated to be between $4 and $5 million. From a subsidy perspective, for the month, we were $37.7 million below budget, and this is due to lower local subsidies, a timing issue with the state operating assistance, and the fiscal 2020 budget was balanced using over $22 million in deferred state operating assistance. So that would have been our reserves, and we've elected not to touch the reserves, and instead any shortfall will be shored up with our CARES Act funding. The preliminary total subsidy for the fiscal year is $47.7 million below budget. And that, again, is also due to the lower local subsidy and not using this deferred state operating assistance. And we are continuing to work with the budget office at Allegheny County to address any issues with the local subsidy issue. Looking at a year-over-year comparison, the total operating revenue is down $20.9 million from last fiscal year, and that's directly attributable to both lower passenger revenues and also a reduction in shared ride revenue through access. Our preliminary 2020 total expense is $3 million higher than last fiscal year, but that would exclude the accrual entries that we're going to make over the next 4 to 6 weeks. Subsidy level is $19.2 million below last fiscal year. And the subsidy level is really lower because of the impact Trump has had on the local. Oops, hang on. No, that's fine. Me? Okay. Sorry about that. From a reserve perspective, the operating reserves at the beginning of June were $147 million. We received $7.87 million in cash revenues and subsidies during the month. Our cash outflows for the month totaled a little over $37 million, so our operating reserves at the end of June were at a little over $117 million. Can I answer any questions regarding the financials?
Okay. Thank you. I don't hear any questions, so thank you, Pete.
All right, thank you.
And we don't have any resolutions this month, so I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second. I second that.
Thank you. And we'll.
Thank you, Ann.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Michelle, Chair of the Performance Oversight Committee. So good morning to everyone and welcome. And we'll just take a minute here for everyone to make their switch with papers and personnel. And of course, I see Mr. Trona in the hot seat already, so that is great. Thank you. How are you doing this morning, Tony?
Perfect. How are you?
Good. Hey, so far so good.
Perfect.
All right. If we are ready, I have 9 a.m. Google time, so we're going to move forward and get started. So our first item of business this morning will be approval of minutes of the June 18th performance oversight. And on our committee, we have Austin Davis and Lori Mogorski, both representatives. And if we could just each take turns this morning to move our motions forward, that would be great. So right now I'm requesting a motion for approval of minutes of the June 18th Performance Oversight Committee. So Austin, are you there? Representative Mogorski, Lori, are you there? Okay, so I'm going to call on our chairman, Mr.
Michelle, can you hear me now?
Yes, Lori, thank you. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. I'm having trouble unmuting. So moved.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'm going to second that motion. And do we hear anything from Austin? If not, all in favor to approve the minutes of June 18th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Michelle Austin's not going to be on today, I think.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman Lettman. If you could stand in to help us move the agenda along, that would be perfect, please. Okay, so our proposed resolutions this morning. Item number 1 is awarding of bids with Mr. Tony Trona. So good morning and thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members. I have 7 items for your review and presentation to the full board for approval. The first being LRV propulsion system circuit board diagnosis, repair, replacement, and training. This is a sole source. These propulsion system parts were developed specifically for the authority's light rail vehicles by Bombardier Transportation, who is the sole owner of the proprietary technology for these parts. These parts include various electronic circuit boards, control boards that contain pre-programmed logic specific to the safe and proper operation of the LRV fleet. The authority has determined that there are no other sources able to provide these diagnostics and repairs, and Bombardier does not sell these parts or services through a distributor network. Rail maintenance staff seeks a 3-year agreement with Bombardier Transportation to provide these diagnostics, repairs, and parts, and they are expected to cost $1,947,069. The authority also requires training for technicians, maintenance instructors
for car level diagnostics of the propulsion system in order to maintain the authority's fleet. This training will also satisfy the authority's obligation under the Maintenance Apprenticeship Program in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement. Since the propulsion system is proprietary to Bombardier, there are no other entities able to provide the training. This training is expected to cost $62,234, and the maintenance training staff seeks to schedule an agreement to provide this training program within 1 year. The recommendation is that a contract be awarded to Bombardier Transportation in the total not to exceed amount of $2,009,303 to provide the LRV propulsion system diagnostics, repairs, replacement parts, and training. Number 2, electric bus change order. At its January 2000 meeting, the board authorized an agreement with New Flyer to purchase 2 40-foot low-floor electric-powered coaches with an option to purchase up to additional 8 over the next 5 years. At this time, the staff is requesting to exercise the option to purchase 6 additional coaches to continue the authority's coach replacement program. The recommendation that the contract be amended and executed with New Flyer in the amount of $6,490,832.52, which will execute the option for 6 additional electric-powered coaches. The price for these additional coaches represent the pricing received for the purchase of the transit coaches in accordance with the existing approved contract from 2019. Number 3, split disc rotor kits LRV. 3 firms accepted the invitation. 2 bids were received for the purchase of these kits for the authority's fleet. The recommendation is that a contract be awarded to Kenora Brake Company in the amount of $137,360. There's been no recent purchase of this item. However, the staff has determined that the price is fair and reasonable. Number 4, LED lighting fixtures for South Hills Junction, Ross, and Collier. 7 firms accepted the invitation. 6 bids were received for these LED lighting fixtures. The 2 lowest bidders each submitted proposals for items which were not in compliance with the specification and therefore not eligible for award. The recommendation is the contract be awarded to the low responsive bidder, Scott Electric, in the amount of $185,586.87. Now, the difference in price between the 2 bidders that they were not within compliance with the specification, the difference in price was $33,000 to the recommended price. Number 5, hybrid powertrain rotor assemblies, coach. 1 firm accepted the invitation. 1 bid was received for these rotor assemblies and the coaches in our authority's coaches fleet for a 2-year period. The recommendation is that a contract be awarded to Penn Power Group, LLC, an amount of $104,731.08 over a 2-year period. From time to time, we run into this issue where we get 1 bidder. We do our single bid survey, and when we go out and buy engine parts, we run into what's called a distribution situation. Penn Power Group is the sole distributor in Pennsylvania to provide Allison Power rotors for our coaches. So the other bidders indicated on the survey, if they wanted to participate in this bid, they would have to buy the product from Penn. Thus, they wouldn't be very competitive. So we can't go outside of that distribution network. So we're locked into a single bid situation for these particular engine parts. Number 6, wiper arm assemblies. 10 firms accepted the invitation. 8 bids were received for wiper arm assemblies for the fleet over a 2-year period. The recommendation that contract be awarded to Vehicle Maintenance Program, estimated amount of $116,940 over a 2-year period. This price represents a 4% decrease from the previous contracted price. Number 7, LRV intermittent voltage power supply inverters. 5 firms accepted the invitation. 6 bids were received for these power supply inverters. Recommendation is that the contract be awarded to the low responsive bidder, Albatross North America, Inc., estimated amount $911,907. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. I just have one question for you, and that's going back to item number 1 with the LRV propulsion system and having to do with the training. Approximately how long is the training program, and about how many mechanics technicians in the training program for the maintenance would we have participating? Just a guess if you have it.
Dawn, do you have any idea?
Good morning.
Hi, Dawn. Thank you.
The MAP training program would consist up to almost 2 years of training. The number of technicians I will have to get to you, I know there are 113 employees at the rail center, and a lot of these would go through that training, so probably 80-ish, but I can provide those numbers to get to you.
Okay, that's fine. All right, thank you. Do any of the other board members have questions for Mr. Trona on his 7 items? If not, then I would request a motion to send this to the full board. So Representative Magorski, could you make that motion for me?
Yes.
And Chairman Letwin, could you help me out? And
Yes, sure, second.
Okay, great. And all in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries to move on to the full board. Moving forward with item B, authorization to extend and amend the agreement for property and casualty risk management services with Mr. Mike Cetra. Good morning. How are you doing, Mike?
Good morning, Madam Committee Chairwoman and committee members. This first resolution I have for you this morning would authorize Port Authority to extend and amend its current agreement for property and casualty risk management services. These are basically our insurance brokerage services, includes our commercial property, our real estate insurance policy, our excess workers' compensation, and our executive risk D&O insurance coverages. Following the original RFP process, the board authorized an award of this agreement for an initial term of 3 years for a total not to exceed amount of $324,000. In July of last year, the board authorized the exercise of the first option year and increasing the total not to exceed amount to $432,000. The agreement is now set to expire this September, and staff is recommending that we authorize the second and final option year to extend it through September 30th of 2021 and increase the agreement not to exceed amount by $108,000 to $540,000. I'd note this increase would keep the consultant Aon's annual flat fee paid. It'll be at its current annual rate, the rate we've had since the beginning of the agreement, which is $108,000 a year paid in quarterly installments. And we also have a 10% DB participation on this contract. Aon, the prime, has met this goal to date by utilizing an entity known as Exude LLC to assist in reviewing and analyzing terms of our various policies and policy renewals to ensure that any exclusions or language that we vetted that before renewing policies. So subject to any member questions, I respectfully request that the committee recommend this resolution to the full board for approval.
Any questions from our board members? If not, could I please have a motion to move this forward to the full committee next week, please?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries moving forward. Thank you. Item C of our resolutions is authorization to extend and amend our lease agreement with new Cingular Wireless PCS LLC, and again, continuing with Mr. Cetra. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. My second and final resolution this morning would authorize Port Authority to extend and amend its current lease agreement with New Cingular Wireless LLC. Port Authority and New Cingular originally entered into the lease agreement in July of 2000 for an initial term of 5 years with 3 5-year options for the installation, maintenance, and operation of a cellular communications tower that's located on top of a designated portion of Port Authority's Wood Street Station roof. The lease is currently set to expire at the end of this month. Port Authority staff and New Cingular representatives have negotiated a proposed extension that would amend the lease for up to 20 additional years. Again, that would be 5 initial years, then 3 5-year optional extensions, subject to termination for breach or if the tower would interfere with Port Authority's transit operations at any point. And the annual rent for the first extension year would be $31,800, and there would be a 3% annual rent adjustment for the remaining term of the lease, including if the options were exercised. Because the Wood Street Station has a federal interest, ongoing federal interest due to how the funding that was utilized to construct and improve it, Port Authority staff sought Federal Transit Administration approval, which is called incidental use approval, to enter into the lease amendment. And FTA provided this approval subject to final Port Authority board review and approval on June 30th. So again, subject to any member questions, I would respectfully request that the committee recommend this resolution to authorize extension of this lease in a form approved by legal counsel to the full board for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Cedric. Do I hear, and are there any questions from our board members on this issue? Hearing no questions, could I please have a motion to move this forward to the full board on Friday? Representative Migorski?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of moving the motion forward, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Motion carries forward. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Third item on our agenda this year is a report of our financial 2020 annual physical inventory with Glenn Meister. So good morning, Glenn.
Hi.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well.
Good.
So here we go.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, and good morning to the members of the Performance Oversight Committee. The Internal Audit Department is presenting the results of the audit of the internal controls for the fiscal year 2020 annual physical inventory. Internal Audit Department personnel observed the inventory February 28th through March 1st, 2020. The inventory was coordinated by the Purchasing and Materials Management Department, and its purpose is to ensure that the on-hand quantity for each individual item is accurately recorded in PeopleSoft so that transit operations are supported by having materials and supplies available when needed. For fiscal year 2020, material and supply expenditures were approximately $17.1 million. This amount is through fiscal year 2020 period 10, which is April. Note that this is an unaudited amount. The objectives of our audit were to determine the adequacy of internal controls, the accuracy of item counts, and if cutoff processes were properly followed for requisitions and receipts issued before and after inventory. The scope of our audit was the fiscal year 2020 inventory, and the detailed methodology can be found in the full audit report. We observed the employees as they counted the inventory items, and we statistically sampled and tested inventory counts in the cutoff process at the Manchester, South Hills Village, South Hills Junction, and Auto Shop locations. Note that the Auto Shop was last included in the annual physical inventory in fiscal year 2015. In addition, at Manchester, South Hills Village, South Hills Junction, the Auto Shop, and at the Collier and East Liberty operating locations, we judgmentally tested the accuracy of on-hand quantities recorded by the employees conducting the inventory by independently counting a sample of inventory items and comparing our counts with the counts on their count sheets. We also assisted in resolving variances. In our opinion, in general, the FY 2020 inventory was conducted in a manner that provides reasonable assurance that inventory items were accurately counted, adjustments to on-hand quantities were recorded correctly in PeopleSoft, The cutoff process was properly followed for requisitions and receipts issued before and after inventory, and significant variances were resolved and recorded correctly in PeopleSoft. Based on our statistical sample of 385 items and a margin of error of plus or minus 5%, we are 95% confident that the true accuracy rate of the item counts in the population is between 83.05 and 93.05%. In addition, we judgmentally selected and counted 350 inventory items, which resulted in an accuracy rate of 96%. We would like to note several strengths that we observed during the inventory. First, cutoff processes were well controlled. All 80, that's 100%, of the requisitions and receipts reviewed as part of the inventory cutoff testing, excuse me, were processed according to cutoff instructions. Prior to the start of the fiscal year 2020 inventory, the manager of purchasing materials worked with the manager of inventory operations and distribution to identify items with more than one bin location and to review and adequately resolve those items. And lastly, in general, the overflow stock notices were effectively used and typically placed for items with overflow stock. We are pleased to note that the audit results were positive and resulted in no observations or findings. And lastly, our auditing standards require us to follow up on the prior audit recommendations, and we note that the prior audit recommendations from the fiscal year 2019 inventory have been closed. We will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I forgot to note, and I will make a note for the record, that Glenn Meister is our senior internal auditor. So do we have any questions from our board members? Okay, great. Hearing no questions, I want to say thank you, Glenn, for the report. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And that concludes the business that we have on our agenda today. And so could I have a motion to adjourn the Performance Oversight Committee, please?
So moved.
Second. Great. That concludes our meeting. Thank you.
Hi, this is Jen for the Technology Committee. I'm going to give everyone a minute or two to get their agendas ready, and then I'll let you know when we're going to start. Thanks. Okay, I would like to call the meeting of the Technology Committee to order. First item is the approval of the minutes from the May 21st meeting. I would request a motion, please.
This is Lori, so moved.
And may I have a second?
This is Jeff, a second.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? None, motion carries. Okay, we're going to move into our resolutions. We have a couple, and I will ask Mr. Devlin, I would like to recognize him for his award he received most recently, recognizing his great talents as our CIO. I'm very proud of you, and I know the whole board is, so congratulations to you on that. And if you'd like to move forward, please, and go through the resolutions for us, please do so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have two resolutions for you this morning. The first one is an authorization to enter an agreement for R2001 for data hosting and security services. When I came on board here at the agency a couple years ago and did some SWOT analysis, one of the strengths I noted was that we had moved our data center services off-site using a local firm to really manage the location of the services, the security of our data center, et cetera. With that contract due to expire this coming January, we put an RFP out to work through the process of who should really continue or next run our data center services. Through that process, we have chosen Ideal Integrations. They're a locally based firm here in Pittsburgh, and they happen to be the incumbent carrier of our data center services. So what we're requesting this morning is a resolution that would have a total not to exceed amount of $3,263,000 for this 3-year period, with an option to extend the term up to 2 additional years at the discretion of the authority. So subject to any questions from the board, I'd respectfully request that this resolution be requested to the full board.
Thank you, Mr. Devlin, for your presentation. I'll ask committee members if they have any questions. Seeing none, I'll ask board members if you have any questions. Seeing none, I will request a motion from committee members for approval.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Devlin. The second item?
The second item is a request for authorization to enter an agreement with a pool of firms for information technology consulting and supporting services. Again, we have an expiring contract that we've been running for some years. This particular list of agreements includes multiple categories that are displayed there on the screen. We've added a couple this current year because of expanding needs we have within our technology sector. I will note amongst those 8 categories, number 6, audiovisual, we did not have any bidders that met the capacity or capabilities that we were looking for, so we have struck category 6 from the various list of recommended proposals for this. I will say kudos to the procurement team. Not only did they have to deal with me personally on working through this RFP, but we had 38 different proposers, and amongst those requesting different categories, we had 82 separate reviews. These were submitted in a digital form for the first time here at the agency, to my knowledge. For each member of the committee, and there were 8 members of the voting committee, it was about 3,300 pieces of paper that were saved digitally, which is about 6.5 reams of paper per person. So there was quite a considerable amount of paper saved, and by going digital to work through this process, it was a very efficient service. So what we came down to is these 8 particular firms here to enter agreements with across a variety of different categories per firm. You will see that 3 of them are local firms, 6 of the 8 have DBE status, and 3 of them carried from the prior contract. So we were pleased with the outcome of this because we have a nice mix of local and national firms, absolutely working with our DBE options there, and then a few that we carry forth from the prior contract. So the terms of this resolution is $8,639,200 for a 4-year contract with another 2-year option to extend as necessary. So subject to any questions, I'd respectfully request that this resolution be presented to the full board.
Thank you, Mr. Devlin. I do have one question, and I'll open up for questions for committee members and then members. What is the plan for the item that you are unable to receive successful bids for moving forward?
Yes, we're actually in process of submitting a separate RFP specific to some needs around audiovisual, and we hope to release that either Q4 or Q1 of this year.
Okay, thank you. And I'd also like to commend your staff on, again, moving towards more digital storage, saving on paper, trying to automize the authority. Everything you've been doing, we've been very pleased with, at least I have, I can say. And I just wish continued success within our technology improvements. May I ask board members, committee members first, if you have any questions you'd like on this resolution? Seeing none, may I ask board members if you have any questions related to this resolution? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion for approval of this resolution.
So moved. Second.
Second. I see here move in a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Devlin, I believe next we have a presentation. Would you like to have your staff move forward with that, please?
Yes, thank you very much. So that's what we've tried to do is highlight technology that's being used across the agency. So Philip St. Pierre, who's part of David's, what's the official name of that group? Planning and Development Group. There we go. So I asked Philip if he wouldn't mind coming and talk about how his group uses technology tools around service planning. And with that, I yield the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, committee members. I am Philip St. Pierre, Director of Service Planning and Scheduling at Port Authority. And today I'm going to discuss some of the technology tools that we utilize in service planning. So first, let's talk about what we do with the data and what's the purpose of the data and the technology that's used. It all boils down to really enhancing the customer experience. That's one of our agency tactical goals, is to really improve the customer experience. And by collecting data through the hardware and software that is being utilized today and in the future, all those data points really help us create service plans and create ideas and concepts that can go out to the public and get their ideas and create service plans that are effective, efficient, and equitable. Now, while we do focus a lot on the data and the data collection, it must be noted that those plans are really also driven by the public outreach process and collecting the public input, because the data points don't necessarily tell the story of what the public needs are and what the community needs are of the plans that we produce. So it's very important that we find a balance of the data driven decisions with the balance of the public outreach. So the first set of software that I'd like to discuss is the scheduling and operations software. We have a product from a company called Giro that produces a scheduling software called HASIS. It's also scheduling software, but it's also part of our operations package called Daily. So for the scheduling side of the house, it's what we build all the schedules and produce the timetables for all our fixed route system. Those public timetables turn into work assignments for the operators, which are called runs, and the operators in seniority order bid on those runs for their daily work assignments. Those daily work assignments are managed through a product called Daily, and it's the way that the garages manage the personnel and the workforce at the divisions, but also through that Daily product, they can manage the vehicle assignments on a daily basis. So it's just a logistics software to help manage the workforce and the resources out at the divisions. There's also features inside the scheduling software called ATP. I still have not figured out what the acronym is for that, but it's called ATP, and it's our running time analysis tool. So this, my next item is the clever devices, the AVL, the automatic vehicle locator, which is the GPS on the buses, provides that information, and it's integrated with our scheduling software to help us analyze the run times and the travel times of our routes and help us improve our on-time performance. So we're learning every day something new about this tool and being able to help produce better schedules and improve our reliability for the system. The next item is the battery electric bus tools within this scheduling software. We're learning these tools to better utilize the features. We already have 2 electric buses on site that we're running on limited routes right now, but then we're going to be expanding. I believe the resolution today was adding 6 more buses, battery electric buses, into the fleet. So as our fleet complement changes, our procedures must change as well in how we schedule these buses, because they do operate very similar to diesel, but there are some limitations of state of charge and the charging times for these buses. So it's a lot of things that we need to factor in and making sure that it's part of our service planning effort. Another feature is the general transit feed specification development, and that's just with the short acronym is GTFS. That information feeds into Google, feeds into the transit app, feeds into our TrueTime app. It's publicly available. A lot of folks use it for projects at some of the universities around here to do data analysis on our system. But it's mainly the data that translates into trip planning tools for the public, so that so you don't have to necessarily rely on paper schedules. You can utilize your cell phone, or even our customer service utilizes this tool to help the customer's trip plan and navigate around the system efficiently. So after we build all the schedules and we send it out to the field onto the buses and out to operations to operate the new service plan, and that's mainly managed through Clever Devices. It's a software and hardware component. On the software side, it's the computer-aided dispatch and automatic vehicle locator software and hardware that's on the buses. So it's typically called CAD AVL. And our dispatchers and our road operations, this is the software that they can track the buses and making sure that they're performing on time and make decisions if they need to make any modifications on how things are operating, manage the detour processes, making sure buses need to be where they should be at a specific time. And that's all controlled by the computer that's on the buses and the GPSs. So all that information comes back to us and feeds our real-time arrival information that goes out to True Time and the transit app. And so it's a lot of information that goes to the public. We also have automatic passenger counters on our buses. That's through Clever Devices. And this also, earlier this year, the IT department was able to set up that through our True Time app, we are able to send out the feed of the passenger capacities on our buses. So passengers have access to real-time arrival information, and they also have access to the capacity on the buses in real time. And also, our dispatchers and road operations personnel have access to the passenger capacity information. So it's another component in giving them situational awareness on how to best utilize our resources and provide service to the community, especially during this time of the COVID-19 situation where we are limiting the passenger capacities on our buses. Some additional software that we have is the timetable and head sign software. The timetable software helps us produce the schedules that go on the website and the paper software. And the head sign software is the destination signs that are on the front and sides of the buses so that passengers know which bus they're boarding and which bus is on its way. So Jeff, can you click on that for me? Thank you. Thank you. So the next software that I'd like to talk about is really our planning and insight data software. We are transitioning to a new automatic passenger counter back-end software called RideCheck Plus. This is going to give us increased analytics on the data that's collected from the automatic passenger counters. All that information feeds into the map the system map that you see on the screen here. If you zoom in on these routes, you can see the individualized stops on each of the routes and see what the ridership at those routes are and see how many boardings and alightings are at specific stops. So those automatic passenger counters really give us great detailed insight of what's happening out in the system. And this RideCheck Plus will help us have faster and improved processes with the APC data. ArcGIS is another tool that the system map that you're viewing on the slide today is a product of the ArcGIS system. It's a geographic information system. It's a very powerful tool. I believe probably nearly every transit agency, around the nation utilizes a tool like this for really in-depth analytics. We utilize it for our Title VI analysis that was presented today. It's just a very powerful tool for analytics and mapping and layering and helping us provide very detailed information for different populations. They utilizes the census data, so it's a very useful tool. Another insightful tool that we've gathered and onboarded staff to utilize is Tableau. It's a dashboarding tool software that also provides business intelligence from all the data points that are collected through our CAD AVL, the APC software, farebox data. So we're really utilizing that data, especially through COVID times, to visually see our ridership. What's our ridership doing on fixed route, on paratransit? What's our out of service hours? So this dashboarding software is very useful in automating this data and providing real-time information to make decisions. Fare collection. Right now, we are operating with Scheit and Bachman fare boxes and ticket vending machines. We were able to collect ridership data from the fare boxes and see the utilization of the ticket vending machines. So that really helps us provide some data points for ridership. But we are starting to onboard the Masabi application, which is a mobile app that's going to have readers on each of the vehicles. And it's going to give us more insights on the analytics of ridership, especially with different fare types. We can see where, like around the university, one of the decisions that was made, some of the routes around the university in Oakland, the universities in Oakland, over 3/4 of the ridership comes from student fares, from student passes. And being that the universities are closed due to the COVID-19 situation, we made a decision to keep those routes on a reduced schedule due to the lack of ridership that was collected and the type of ridership through the student passes that was not occurring. With the mobile app, we'll be able to get more insight on travel demand modeling. We're utilizing transfer data, where passengers are going from one route to another, and that's really going to help us in route design to see if we can produce better routes where folks don't need a transfer if there's a large transfer activity. So here's some potential and future technologies. Some of these are already in the works. Some of them are kind of a wish list of items. The first one is traffic signal priority. This is going to be part of the BRT project and the Smart Spines project. Traffic signal priority is where the bus talks to intersections to send a request to the intersection to get priority to allow faster operations of our buses. There's different parameters that can be set up. Some typical parameters are if the bus is late, it will send a request to get an advanced signal on that light, or hold the green light a little bit longer to let the bus through. So as our operations, as the routes become faster with this technology, we'll be able to utilize that and analyze the run times and produce faster schedules or quicker schedules with the less travel time due to this technology. Queue jumps are another transit kind of priority feature that allows a bus at an intersection to where every light would be red for POV traffic, but then the bus would get a specific signal that it would get in front of the traffic to basically jump the queue in front of that at an intersection. The next item is connected vehicle technology. This is very similar to traffic signal priority. As it talks, this equipment talks to the environment around it, talks to other vehicles that may have this technology, talks to intersections. There's a plethora of data points that this connected vehicle technology can do. Some of the things that it can do is increase the situational awareness to the operator, such as bad weather ahead or icy road conditions, or if there is an accident ahead. If all these vehicles are talking to one another, they can send out warnings. Some vehicles may be equipped in the future with vibrating seats that say, hey, there's something that you need to look for. So it's really cool technology. We don't have anything in place, but it's very, it's very separate from automated vehicle technology. The connected vehicle technology is very focused on providing data to and information to the operator operating that vehicle so they can have a very safe, increase the safety of those trips. Off-board fare collection is another one that could help speed up the travel times of our routes. The fare collection on board the vehicles is typically very fast with our Connect card, but sometimes people have to use cash. It does slow down our operations, but if we can transition to off-board fare collection where everybody just boards the bus and everybody goes, that could help speed up our service as well. One thing that we are working on is trying to get automatic passenger counters on our light rail system. We do have APCs on all our fixed route buses, but the light rail vehicles is a gap that we're looking to fill so that we can get more in-depth ridership analytics on the light rail system. Detour management is a software that we are currently in the process of working through to get onboarded through Clever Devices. It's very frustrating when you go to a bus stop and you don't know that the bus is detoured, or if there's a sign saying the bus is on detour and you don't know that in advance. So one of the things that we really want to focus on and improve reliability and that connection with our customers is managing detours. There are a lot of detours that occur in Pittsburgh due to construction and events and everything. So if we can send that information out as quickly as possible when things happen, or even if they are planned, so in the trip planning process, if they know in advance that there's a disruption to their trip, they can make the appropriate adjustments without getting, reducing that frustration of showing at a bus stop and either the bus may not show or there's a sign that says the bus is on detour and then you get frustrated and have to go to a different location. So we're very excited to get this tool over the next year. The next item that we're working on is an electronic bus stop and passenger amenity work order process. We have a lot of work orders that go out to the field and we send it manually through the mail to our field workers to get the bus stop signage updated if need be. And we would like to automate that process and utilize an electronic version of that, reduce paper consumption and increase the collaboration between us and the field. So today that concludes my presentation, and I would like to give a shout out to our IT department. This is just like on a bus, everything needs to be maintained and upgraded, and our IT department does a fantastic job responding to any issues with the software or hardware, and it keeps us up and running and collecting data to continue to make these decisions and develop our plans for our customers. So that concludes my presentation today, and I can answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you very much for that presentation. It was very thoughtfully done, and I concur with your statements about the technology, and I want to commend CEO Kellerman. She came on board, she recognized the need to enhance our capacity to improve technology. She did a CIO search or continued the one we had forthcoming and found Mr. Devlin, and I've been very pleased, and I think I can speak with the rest of the board members for how we've been able to take things to the next level technology-wise, and I'm only looking forward to more things to come. So thank you. So at this time, I'll entertain any questions from any board member related to the presentation.
For just a compliment, excellent presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I couldn't agree more. Mr. Devlin, do we have any other business before the committee today?
We do not.
Okay, seeing no other business, I request a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Okay, and I'll second that. All in favor?
Second. Aye.
Okay, aye, thank you. And meeting stands adjourned, and I believe, Chairman Letland, that is the adjournment of all the meetings for today, correct? I don't know if you heard me, but I think that's so.
Yeah, that's
okay,
correct.
So,
Yeah.
Okay, Mr.
That's
Devlin, so if you'd like to conclude the committee sessions for the day, thank you very much for everyone participating, and everyone have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.